Welcome to Cybersecurity Workshops. This is David Raymond, and today we're going to talk about file information. So here we are in the last discussion around the Linux file system. So command line interface course created by Matt Vogel, and we're in Module 2 working with files and directories, and we've gone through this whole list of things related to files and directories, and we're at the last bit of information here, how to get information about a file. So we'll jump right in. This should be a pretty short discussion, honestly. So we're going to look at two different commands on the Linux command line. The file command, that's going to give us some information about a file, and then the stat command is going to give us sort of some different information about the file. So these are two commands that are useful to get info about a file. So the file command is used to test a file and find out what type of file it is. What type of file it is. So here, this example shows the file command being used to identify a directory. So I'm here on my Kali Linux workstation. I'm in my home directory, and I can list some stuff there. So if I were to say file and look at a directory like desktop is a directory, right? It says desktop is a directory. If I were to, look at, let me get a long listing here so I can see what's what. So file one, so if I cat file one, we see it's got some text in it. So if I were to say file one is ASCII text. So ASCII is a particular way to represent simple alphanumeric data in a file. So so file one is a text file, and that's when I cat the file, that I get just some regular text. So I have a script file here that I created in an earlier workshop. Script. Let's do file in the script. File script. It's a script. Okay, so that's useful information. It's a born-again shell script. It's got ASCII text in it, and it's executable. Okay, so that's helpful information. Remember, so we created the script earlier on, and we were using Bash, some Bash tools to do that. So Bash is the born-again shell, So the file command used to see what type of file a file is, and so here's an example. I just did a similar example. The file command being used to identify an ASCII text file. ASCII stands for American Standard Code for Information Interchange. Bit of trivia. Probably never get asked that on a test, but it's just a way to represent alphanumeric data. Most text files in Linux are ASCII text files. It's a standard format for displaying text. So here's another example. It shows the file command being used to identify a Linux command, sudo. So the Linux commands are all they're all files in the file system, and they're all executable programs. So here we're using the file, instead of saying sudo file, we're saying file sudo, right? So we're using the file command to analyze the sudo file on the file system, and it turns out that sudo is an ELF file. So it says it says to set UID. So we talked earlier about set UID a little bit. It's an ELF file. ELF stands for executable Linux, executable and linkable format, which is a standard file format for executable files on a Linux system. And then the rest of it is just more information about the executable file. So there's this LSB, which means least significant, 64 least significant bit, deals with how the data is represented in memory. Not really important right now, but the fact that something is an ELF file, that means it's an executable program. So we could, for example, say file. So remember all of the Linux commands are executable programs, so maybe I want to see what kind of file the ls command is. So obviously ls is going to be an ELF file. It's going to be an executable and linkable format. But I'm going to do that little experiment. So first, how do I know where the ls? How do I find the ls command in the file system? We used some different techniques for finding files earlier on. In this case, the quickest way is to say which ls, and it tells me that the ls that I get when I type ls at the command line is located in the /bin directory. So if I were to say file /bin/ls, I see that ls is a 64-bit. It's an ELF file, executable and linkable format. So it's an executable program on the Linux file system, 64-bit, least significant bit. And then here's a whole bunch more information about the file. Dynamically linked, it's stripped, you know, here's just various information about it. None of it's particularly relevant right now for us, but that's lots of data about this particular file. Okay, the other command we're going to look at is the stat command. So stat is used to display file system information about a file or directory. So it's going to give me, the stat command sort of gives me this combination of data between, you know, the directory ln-s command. So if I list a file with the dash, or I'm sorry, ln-l, if I list the files with the -l switch, then I get the file permissions, I get the file name, I get the number of links, I get etc. You know, all that data. And then if I use then you know, there's what I don't get when I do that is I don't get all that extra inode information, and like the inode number, and you know, the last time the thing was modified, last time it was accessed, last time it was changed. And so the way I get all that data together is using the stat command. So if I say stat file1, and stat is short for, I guess, I don't know, statistics, I suppose. If I say stat file1, I get the name of the file, file1, size of the file, number of blocks. So this has to do with how much space is stored on the hard drive. I get the inode number, I get the number of links, I get all this access data. So this gives me lots of additional data about the file that I don't get with just the ln dash. So if I say ls-l file1, for example, I get basic information. But if I say stat file1, I get the rest of this, right? File name, size of the file, I get access data, I get lots of various bits of data about the file. And that most of that data has to do with the inode information. Okay, so again, pretty short discussion, but that's how you get information about some basic info about files. So I'd ask you to go ahead and jump into the file information lab exercise, and teachers, you're gonna have to provide that document to your students. So this concludes our many discussions on the file commands in the Linux command line interface. And so next time we'll move on to module 3. So thanks.